Lolo Enki TV.
The Law of One, Book 3, Session 51. May 13, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, as we begin Book 3 of the Law of One, there are a couple of questions of fairly non-transient importance that I have, and one that I consider to be of a transient nature that I feel obligated to ask. The first is clearing up the final point about harvest. I was wondering if there is a supervision over the harvest, and if so, why this supervision is necessary and how it works, since an entity's harvestability is determined by the violet ray. Is it necessary for entities to supervise the harvest, or is it automatic? Ra, I am Ra. In time of harvest there are always harvesters. The fruit is formed as it will be, but there is some supervision necessary to ensure that this bounty is placed as it should be, without the bruise or the blemish. There are those of 3 levels watching over harvest. The first level is planetary, and that which may be called angelic. This type of guardian includes the mind-body-spirit complex totality or higher self of an entity, and those inner plane entities which have been attracted to this entity through its inner seeking. The second class of those who ward this process are those of the Confederation, who have the honor duty of standing in the small places at the edge of the steps of light love, so that those entities being harvested will not, no matter how confused or unable to make contact with their higher self, stumble and fall away for any reason other than the strength of the light. These Confederation entities catch those who stumble and set them aright so that they may continue into the light. The third group watching over this process is that group you call the Guardians. This group is from the octave above our own and serves in this manner as light bringers. These guardians provide the precise emissions of light love and exquisitely fastidious disseminations of discrimination, so that the precise light love vibration of each entity may be ascertained. Thus the harvest is automatic, and that those harvested will respond according to that which is unchangeable during harvest. That is the violet ray emanation. However, these helpers are around to ensure a proper harvesting, so that each entity may have the fullest opportunity to express its violet ray selfhood. Questioner, this next question I feel to be a transient type of question. However, it has been asked me by one whom I have communicated with, who has been involved intensely in the UFO portion of the phenomenon. If you deem it too transient or unimportant, we'll skip it, but I have been asked how it is possible for the craft of the 4th density to get here, since it seems that as you approach the velocity of light the mass approaches infinity. My question would be why craft would be necessary at all? Ra, I am Ra. You have asked several questions. We shall respond in turn. Firstly, we agree that this material is transient. Secondly, those for the most part coming from distant points, as you term them, do not need craft as you know them. The query itself requires understanding which you do not possess. We shall attempt to state what may be stated. Firstly, there are a few 3rd density entities who have learned how to use craft to travel between star systems while experiencing the limitations you now understand. However, such entities have learned to use hydrogen in a way different from your understanding now. These entities still take quite long durations of time, as you measure it, to move about. However, these entities are able to use hypothermia to slow the physical and mental complex processes in order to withstand the duration of flight. Those such as are from Sirius are of this type. There are 2 other types. One is the type which, coming from 4th, 5th, or 6th density in your own galaxy, has access to a type of energy system which uses the speed of light as a slingshot and thus arrives where it wishes without any perceptible time elapsed in your view. The other type of experience is that of 4th, 5th, and 6th densities of other galaxies, and some within your own galaxy, which have learned the necessary disciplines of personality to view the universe as one being and, therefore, are able to proceed from locus to locus by thought alone, materializing the necessary craft, if you will, to enclose the light body of the entity. Questioner, I assume that that latter type is the type we experience with the landings of the Orion group. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The Orion group is mixed between the penultimate and the latter groups. Questioner, why is a vehicle necessary for this transition? When you, as Ra, went to Egypt earlier, you used bell-shaped craft, but you did this by thought. Can you tell me why you used a vehicle rather than just materializing the body? Ra, I am Ra. The vehicle or craft is that thought form upon which our concentration may function as motivator. We would not choose to use our mind-body-spirit complexes as the focus for such a working. Questioner, thank you. It seems to me, And you can tell me where I am going wrong with this statement. That we have 7 bodies each corresponding to one of the 7 colors of the spectrum, and that energy that creates these 7 bodies is a universal type of energy that streams into our planetary environment and comes in through the 7 energy centers that we have called chakras to develop and perfect these bodies. Each of these bodies is somehow related to the mental configuration that we have, and the perfection of these bodies and the total and streaming of this energy is a function of this mental configuration. And through this mental configuration we may block, to some extent, the in-streamings of energy that created these 7 bodies. Could you comment on where I am wrong and correct that which I have stated? Ra, I am Ra. Your statement is substantially correct. To use the term mental configuration is to oversimplify the manners of blockage of in-streaming which occur in your density. The mind complex has a relationship to the spirit and body complexes which is not fixed. Thus blockages may occur betwixt spirit and mind, or body and mind, upon many different levels. We reiterate that each energy center has 7 subcolors, let us say, for convenience. Thus spiritual mental blockages combined with mental bodily blockages may affect each of the energy centers in several differing ways. Thus you may see the subtle nature of the balancing and evolutionary process. Questioner, I am unsure as to whether this will provide an avenue of questioning that will be fruitful, but I will ask this question since it seems to me that there is a connection here. On the back of the book, Secrets of the Great Pyramid, there are several reproductions of Egyptian drawings or works, some showing birds flying over horizontal entities. Could you tell me what this is and if it has any relationship to Ra? Ra, I am Ra. These drawings of which you speak are some of many which distort the teaching of our perception of death as the gateway to further experience. The distortions concern those considerations of specific nature, as to processes of the so-called dead mind-body-spirit complex. This may be termed, in your philosophy, the distortion of Gnosticism, that is, the belief that one may achieve knowledge in a proper position by means of carefully perceived and accentuated movements, concepts, and symbols. In fact, the process of the physical death is as we have described before. One in which there is aid available, and the only need at death is the releasing of that entity from its body by those around it and the praising of the process by those who grieve. By these means may the mind-body-spirit which has experienced physical death be aided, not by the various perceptions of careful and repeated rituals. Questioner, you spoke at an earlier time of rotational speeds of energy centers. Am I correct in assuming that this is a function of the blockage of the energy center, so that when it is less blocked, the speed of rotation is higher and the energy in streaming is greater? Ra, I am Ra. You are partially correct. In the first 3 energy centers, a full-on blocking of this energy will create speeds of rotation. As the entity develops the higher energy centers, however, these centers will then begin to express their nature by forming crystal structures. This is the higher or more balanced form of activation of energy centers, as the space-time nature of this energy is transmuted to the time-space nature of regularization and balance. Questioner, what do you mean by crystal structures? Ra, I am Ra. Each of the energy centers of the physical complex may be seen to have a distinctive crystalline structure in the more developed entity. Each will be somewhat different, just as in your world no 2 snowflakes are alike. However, each is regular. The red energy center often is in the shape of the spoked wheel. The orange energy center in the flower shape containing 3 petals. The yellow center again in a rounded shape, many-faceted, as a star. The green energy center, sometimes called the lotus shape, the number of points of crystalline structure dependent upon the strength of this center. The blue energy center, capable of having perhaps 100 facets and capable of great flashing brilliance. The indigo center, a more quiet center which has the basic triangular or 3-petaled shape in many, although some adepts who have balanced the lower energies may create more faceted forms. The violet energy center is the least variable and is sometimes described in your philosophy as 1,000-petaled, as it is the sum of the mind-body-spirit complex distortion totality. Questioner, right now I feel a feeling at the indigo center. If this center were totally activated and not blocked at all, would I then feel nothing there? Ra, I am Ra. This query, if answered, would infringe upon the law of confusion. Questioner, immediately after the death of the physical body you have stated that the primary activated body is the indigo, and you stated that it is the form maker. Why is this so? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this session of working. The indigo body may be seen to be an analog for intelligent energy. It is, in microcosm, the logos. The intelligent energy of the mind-body-spirit complex totality draws its existence from intelligent infinity or the Creator. This creator is to be understood, both in macrocosm and microcosm, to have, as we have said, two natures, the unpotentiated infinity which is intelligent, this is all that there is. Free will has potentiated, both the creator of us all and ourselves as co-creators with intelligent infinity which has will. This will may be drawn upon by the indigo or form-making body and its wisdom used to then choose the appropriate locus and type of experience which this co-creator or sub-logos you call so carelessly a person will take. I am Ra. This is the time for any brief queries. Questioner, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. All is well. You are conscientious. I leave you now, my brothers, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, we're going to stop it there for a second and take an intermission because I really think that this topic is really important, and I think it's something that everyone's really interested in, right? Like, who isn't interested on, exactly what happens when you die and what the process is when you go and emerge back with Source. And it's also being called the harvest right now because during the harvest is when the souls that are in 3D graduate before they go into their next life, which will be 4D, which will probably likely be here on this planet again. Now, there is a process for the harvest, and it takes a little bit more care because, as Ra says it, you don't want to bruise the peach. So there's like 3 safeguards to ensure this process. And I did explain this a little bit in my previous video when I talked about what is the one infinite Creator. I used the analogy of the soul being like a snake, and there's this veil of forgetting, and on one side of the veil of forgetting is the 3D reality, and on the other side of the veil is your higher self, right? All the other densities are on that side of the veil. Now, if your soul is like a snake, you're going to pierce the veil of forgetting to the point where you have 3 densities on one side of the veil of forgetting, and all the other densities in your higher self is on the other side of the veil. Now, what happens during the harvest when your kind of soul is going to graduate into 4D in order to have a good harvest, there are 3 different fail-safes. The first one is your higher self. So when you die, your soul will kind of coil back like a snake and go back towards your higher self on the other side of the veil. And this process can sometimes be confusing. So if you can't find your higher self or you get a little disorientated, that's when your spirit guides come in, who are usually about 6 density entities that have been with you your whole life, and they're going to try to aid in this process. And if you hear a lot of stories about sometimes you see dead loved ones or people that had died, or all these other entities. Sometimes your spirit guide will look like someone you knew to help with the process to make it easier. So your spirit guides are there to help with this process as you kind of coil back and emerge back with your higher self and with Source. And there's also one other kind of fail-safe, and Ra called them the guardians. And these are extremely high density beings. They're higher than Ra, and they kind of almost like are the guardians of our universe. Basically, they are the guardians of this logos, and they are always kind of governing this process. No matter how traumatic a death is, they're going to be there to always oversee, especially during this time of a harvest, this time in our history of our planet, of our soul, because we're going to graduate to 4D in the next life. And that's what the harvest is. We are dying our last life in 3D. So this snake is going to coil back, re-emerge with Source, and in our next life, which will be 4D, think about it as that snake going back in, and it's going to pierce that veil of forgetting just a little bit more to make it 4D. So you're going to have more of your higher self with you in 4D. You're going to be more connected and have a more knowing with other entities, and as you journey through your graduation of the soul. So the harvest is when you finish your process in 3D, and if you're going to be orientated positive, which most of you are, service to others, you're going to go and coil back with source, and then the next time you're going to reemerge. And because this is a bit more of an importance when you go from density to density, as we're going from 3 to 4D, it is being governed and oversought by higher entities to ensure that nothing will get lost, type thing. So that's what Ra was really trying to get in there, and it is a bit of a complex concept if you've never heard it before, but that's kind of like the best way I think I can describe it. But leave me your comments if you guys have any more questions, and I'll try to answer them in the next video. But let's get on with it, because this next session is all about UFOs and space travel and how it's done by different entities. So it gets really good, and I got some really great downloads about it, but I will talk about that at the end of this video. So let's get into it. Here is session 52.
The Law of One, Book 3, Session 52. May 19th, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. Questioner, in the previous session you stated, the other type of experience is the fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies and some within your own galaxy which have learned necessary disciplines of personality to view the universe as one being are able to proceed from locus to locus by thought alone, materializing the necessary craft. I would like to ask you, when you say fourth, fifth, and sixth densities of other galaxies, some within your own galaxy, are you stating here that more of the entities in other galaxies have developed the abilities of personality than have those in this galaxy for this type of travel? I am using the term galaxy with respect to the lenticular shape of billions of stars. Ra, I am Ra. We have once again used a meaning for this term, galaxy, that does not lie within your vocabulary at this time, if you will call it so. We referred to your star system. It is incorrect to assume that other star systems are more able to manipulate the dimensions than your own. It is merely that there are many other systems besides your own. Questioner, thank you. I think that possibly I'm on an important point here, because it seems to me that the great work in evolution is the discipline of personality, and it seems that we have two types of entities moving around the universe. One stemming from disciplines of personality, and the other stemming from what you call the slingshot effect. I won't even get into the sublight speeds because I don't consider that too important. I only consider this material important because of the fact that we are considering disciplines of the personality. Is the use of the slingshot effect for travel what you might call an intellectual or a left brain type of involvement of understanding rather than a right brain type? Ra, I am Ra. Your perception on this point is extensive. You penetrate the outer teaching. We prefer not to utilize the terminology of right and left brain due to the inaccuracies of this terminology. Some functions are repetitive or redundant in both lobes, and further, to some entities the functions of the right and left are reversed. However, the heart of the query is worth some consideration. The technology of which you, as a social complex, are so enamored at this time is but the birthing of the manipulation of the intelligent energy of the sublogos which, when carried much further, may evolve into technology capable of using the gravitic effects of which we spoke. We note that this term is not accurate, but there is no closer term. Therefore, the use of technology to manipulate that outside the self is far, far less of an aid to personal evolution than the disciplines of the mind-body-spirit complex resulting in the whole knowledge of the self in the microcosm and macrocosm. To the disciplined entity, all things are open and free. The discipline which opens the universes opens also the gateways to evolution. The difference is that of choosing either to hitchhike to a place where beauty may be seen or to walk, step by step, independent and free in this independence to praise the strength to walk and the opportunity for the awareness of beauty. The hitchhiker, instead, is distracted by conversation and the vagaries of the road and, dependent upon the whims of others, is concerned to make the appointment in time. The hitchhiker sees the same beauty but has not prepared itself for the establishment, in the roots of mind, of the experience. Questioner, I would ask this question in order to understand the mental disciplines and how they evolve. Does fourth, fifth, and sixth density positive or service to others orientation of social memory complexes use both the slingshot and the personality disciplines type of effect for travel, or do they use only one? Ra, I am Ra. The positively oriented social memory complex will be attempting to learn the disciplines of mind, body, and spirit. However, there are some which, having the technology available to use intelligent energy forces to accomplish travel, do so while learning the more appropriate disciplines. Questioner: Then I am assuming that in the more positively oriented social memory complexes, a much higher percentage of them use the personality disciplines for this travel. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is correct. As positive fifth density moves into sixth, there are virtually no entities which any longer use outer technology for travel or communication. Questioner: Could you give me the same information on the negatively oriented social memory complexes as to the ratios and as to how they use the slingshot effect or the disciplines of the personality for travel? Ra: I am Ra. The fourth density negative uses the slingshot gravitic light effect, perhaps 80% of its membership being unable to master the disciplines necessary for alternate methods of travel. In fifth density negative, approximately 50% at some point gain the necessary discipline to use thought to accomplish travel. As the sixth density approaches, the negative orientation is thrown into confusion and little travel is attempted. What travel is done is perhaps 73% of light thought. Questioner: Is there any difference close to the end of fifth density in the disciplines of personality between positive and negative orientation? Ra: I am Ra. There are patent differences between the polarities, but no difference whatsoever in the completion of the knowledge of the self necessary to accomplish this discipline. Questioner: Am I correct, then, in assuming that discipline of the personality, knowledge of self, and control and strengthening of the will would be what any fifth density entity would see as those things of importance? Ra: I am Ra. In actuality, these things are of importance in third through early seventh densities. The only correction and nuance that we would make is your use of the word control. It is paramount that it be understood that it is not desirable or helpful to the growth of the understanding, may we say, of an entity by itself to control thought processes or impulses except where they may result in actions not consonant with the law of one. Control may seem to be a shortcut to discipline, peace, and illumination. However, this very control potentiates and necessitates the further incarnative experience in order to balance this control or repression of that self which is perfect. Instead, we appreciate and recommend the use of your second verb in regard to the use of the will. Acceptance of self, forgiveness of self, and the direction of the will, this is the path towards the disciplined personality. Your faculty of will is that which is powerful within you as co-creator. You cannot ascribe to this faculty too much importance. Thus it must be carefully used and directed in service to others for those upon the positively oriented path. There is great danger in the use of the will as the personality becomes stronger, for it may be used even subconsciously in ways reducing the polarity of the entity. Questioner: I sense, possibly, a connection between what you just said and why so many wanderers have selected the harvest time on this planet to incarnate. Am I correct? Ra: I am Ra. It is correct that in the chance to remember that which has been lost in the forgetting there is a nimity of opportunity for positive polarization. We believe this is the specific thrust of your query. Please ask further if it is not. Questioner: I would just include the question as to why the time of harvest is selected by so many wanderers as time for incarnation. Ra: I am Ra. There are several reasons for incarnation during harvest. They may be divided by the term self and other self. The overriding reason for the offering of these brothers and sisters of sorrow in incarnative states is the possibility of aiding other selves by the lightening of the planetary consciousness distortions and the probability of offering catalyst to other selves which will increase the harvest. There are two other reasons for choosing this service which have to do with the self. The wanderer, if it remembers and dedicates itself to service, will polarize much more rapidly than is possible in the far more etiolated realms of higher density catalyst. The final reason is within the mind-body-spirit totality or the social memory complex totality, which may judge that an entity or members of a societal entity can make use of third density catalyst to recapitulate a learning teaching which is adjudged to be less than perfect. This especially applies to those entering into and proceeding through sixth density wherein the balance between compassion and wisdom is perfected. Questioner: Thank you. Just as something that I am a little inquisitive about, but which is not of much importance, I would like to make a statement which I intuitively hunch. I may be wrong. You are speaking of the slingshot effect and that term has puzzled me. The only thing that I can see is that you must put energy into a craft until it approaches the velocity of light, and this of course requires more and more energy. The time dilation occurs, and it seems to me that it would be possible to, by moving it 90 degrees to the direction of travel, somehow change this stored energy in its application of direction or sense so that you move out of space-time into time-space with a 90 degrees deflection. Then the energy would be taken out in time-space and you would re-enter space-time at the end of this energy burst. Am I in any way correct on this? Ra: I am Ra. You are quite correct as far as your language may take you and, due to your training, more able than we to express the concept. Our only correction, if you will, would be to suggest that the 90 degrees of which you speak are an angle which may best be understood as a portion of the tesseract. Questioner: Thank you. Just a little point that was bothering me of no real importance. Is there then, from the point of view of an individual who wishes to follow the service to others path, anything of importance other than disciplines of personality, knowledge of self, and strengthening of will? Ra, I am Ra. This is technique. This is not the heart. Let us examine the heart of evolution. Let us remember that we are all one. This is the great learning teaching. In this unity lies love. This is a great learned teaching. In this unity lies light. This is the fundamental teaching of all planes of existence and materialization. Unity, love, light, and joy. This is the heart of evolution of the spirit. The second-ranking lessons are learned taught in meditation and in service. At some point the mind-body-spirit complex is so smoothly activated and balanced by these central thoughts or distortions that the techniques you have mentioned become quite significant. However, the universe, its mystery unbroken, is one. Always begin and end in the Creator, not in technique. Questioner: In the previous session you mentioned the light bringers from the octave. Am I to understand that those who provide the light for the graduation are of an octave above the one we experience? Could you tell me more about these light bringers, who they are, etc.? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the last full query of this working. This octave density of which we have spoken is both omega and alpha. The spiritual mass of the infinite universe is becoming one central sun or creator once again. Then is born a new universe, a new infinity, a new logos which incorporates all that the creator has experienced of itself. In this new octave there are also those who wander. We know very little across the boundary of octave except that these beings come to aid our octave in its logos completion. Is there any brief query which you have at this time? Questioner: Only is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument has some distortion in the area of the lungs which has been well compensated for by the position of the physical complex. All is well. We leave you, my friends, in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.